So welcome, everybody, to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. Today is Friday, and it's September the 3rd, 2021, and our call-in number is 563-999-3581, and press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us, and we'd love to hear your comments and questions because that makes your show. And while we're waiting on Michael to get tuned in, I will invite you again to go to the website that Dr. Tim just mentioned, and it's whyagain, WHYAGAIN.org. And there's lots of information out there. We are still making some changes on the website, so if you run across something that the URL isn't working or there's something that you would like to be set up differently so that you could find it easier or whatever, drop me a line at Jeanie, Jeanie, at whyagain.org, and let me know, and I'll see what I can do about getting it fixed. I'm still working on the shopping cart, and we're still working on being able to send newsletters out through the website. Haven't got those features set up yet. But we will be sending out a newsletter here shortly through our current Constant Contact, letting you know about some things that are going on. And we hope that you join us. One of the things is that we're going to be doing Mindshifters and Still Point Breathing. And we're going to do it once a month if we have people sign up for it. And the first one is scheduled for October the 9th. We're going to do it as an all-day workshop instead of as Friday and Saturday. And it will be from 10 in the morning to approximately 5 in the evening. Once you've registered, and the cost for the day is $125. I think Michael's coming up with some specials to offer on it. But once you've registered, then we will set up for you to do the Mindshifter ahead of time, and then we'll go right into processing and then the still point breathing on that Saturday. If everything continues as we hope, it will be the second Saturday of each month, and that will get us through November and December without hitting the holidays, so that'll work out good. And so we hope that you join us for that. And Michael should be dialing in any second. If you have a question or a comment, please press 1. We would much prefer this show to be what you would like to talk about instead of a monologue from us. And so, what's your question? What can we support you with? Or, what would you like us to discuss? Head us in a direction that would serve you, because that's what this show is about. It's support for you. And so we would love to hear from you. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome, everybody. Delighted that you're here. We are honored that we get to play with you again. And we had a conversation with Doug yesterday at the end of the show, and he's going to be calling back in again. But I just want to share a thought or two from A Course in Miracles. And, we described yesterday the core of the forgiveness process as being the canceling of goals and recognizing that goals are what drive perception. And so in the chapter on Chapter 8, The Journey Back, the Body as Means or End, there's an interesting paragraph there that says this: you might well ask how the voice of something that does not exist can be so insistent. Have you thought about the distorting power of the way you want it to be? The power of something you want, even if it is not real. There are many instances of how what you want distorts perception. No one can doubt the ego's skill in building up false cases. And, the temptation to believe what your mind tells you based in hostility or fear is overwhelming. And the one thing you can be assured of is 100% of the time, when your mind is showing you a picture, feeding you a perceptual construct that is accompanied by hostility or fear. The one thing you can be assured of is that that perceptual construct is fake. It's based on corrupt data. It's false. It's lying to you. And it's driven by the way you want it to be. So all you have to do is feed the ego's mind. And when we talk about the ego mind, we're just talking about the database, the multi-generational database called a body-mind unit that has information stored from generation upon generation upon generation. You know, there's an interesting passage if you go back into the ancient scriptures. And again, looking at this not as theology, but as physiology, as fact, as simply the way it works. And you hear this conversation in the ancient scriptures where the Creator, ostensibly is talking to Satan. And the Creator says, Satan, from whence come you? And Satan says, from going to and fro upon the earth, from going back and forth upon it. Now, what is to and fro, back and forth? But a statement of the past. It's not about being out on a physical walk on the planet. It's that we accumulate information, we store it in our cellular structure, and that's called memory. And memory, like perception, as the Course says, is a skill made up by us, place of what the Creator gave us in creation. And so the beauty of the perceptual system is that the Creator built in a warning system for telling you when you're generating a pained reality, and your mind will always have a conversation about what somebody else is doing, about how it's all about them. And until you shift that conversation to yourself, you can't get to true perception. You can't dump the corrupt data, because the corrupt data will keep feeding you falsehoods and lies. And that's all in the effort to protect ourselves, to play the game that, no, it's not my fault, I bear no responsibility here. And so, again, there are many instances of how what you want distorts. No one can doubt the ego's skill at building up false cases. And so the objective here becomes to be willing, where false perception exists, where hostility or fear exists, to enter into forgiveness, to identify the specific way you want it to be. And sometimes it can seem difficult to get to the way you want it to be. Well, gee, I'm not sure what my goal is. Well, actually, it's pretty simple. If you were to describe to this person that you're now blaming the ideal output, the ideal end result of this situation, what would be the ideal end result? Well, I just want them to, honor me and cherish me and hold me in the highest esteem and love. Okay, so now you know that the goal you need to cancel is the goal to be held in honor and high esteem and to be loved. And when you cancel that goal, the perception based in memory that the ego feeds you and says, see, this is the problem. They're not holding you in high esteem and whatever the goals are. And to me, the genius of this man, Yeshua, and there are only two places on the planet where I've found this exact and specific technology. Oh, there are technologies out there that lead you to question, is that really true? But you can say to yourself, well, it's not really true. But if I don't remove the underlying energy, it's going to sneak back into perception again, and again, and again. What you want to do is get to the root of that pained perception and remove the underlying energy, literally the memory. And so, as Jeannie shared yesterday in the lesson, and thank you, Jeannie, for looking that up. I had been holding that the perception as a skill made up by you came from the lesson on what is the world, and I was mistaken there. It is from the lesson on the undoing of fear, and in the introduction, chapter 28, it says this: the miracle does nothing. And interestingly enough, once you've cleaned up and healed your mind, miracles are part of the illusion. They'll disappear too. They're of no use. They're not needed where error does not exist. So the miracle does nothing. All it does is to undo. So remember how many times we said, the Greeks will tell you, oh, that person over there is the cause of your pain, and all you have to do is let them off the hook. No, the cause of your pain is the fact that you hold somewhere hidden in you, maybe from generations ago, the dynamics, the memory of pain. And when that's resonated into activity, if you're living in denial, remember our definition of denial is when I think or speak as though something outside of me is the cause of what's moving inside of me. Then I'm in denial. When I speak or think as though that which is outside of me is the cause of what's moving inside of me, then I have to hide or dissociate from the cause of what's moving inside of me. Now that I've dissociated from it, and if you were around this work in the early days, you'll probably remember the 1,000 times that I wrote on the board, deny, suppress, project. That was, the key line in the workshop, Why Is This Happening to Me Again, for 3 decades. And literally one day in meditation, I was told specifically and directly to get rid of that word suppress because it isn't suppression. Suppression's kind of this thing, it's suppressed, but there you go, you just pulled it up and there it is. No, it's not suppression. It's dissociation. And dissociation means this is no longer mine to access directly. This I have stored in memory. And no matter what I do, no matter how much I want to see it, no matter how much I want to reclaim it, no matter how much I want to own it, no matter how many times I say, oh, yes, I want to see that, I've dissociated from it. It's not mine to hold anymore. It's gone, out of sight. And then that particular energy pattern that I've dissociated from, the simple act of dissociating from it, I've pressed energy into it, which means that the resultant frequency that radiates from me that carries information about what I've dissociated from has become intensified. It has strengthened. And now somebody, probably somebody close enough to me to be willing to kind of take the rap, is going to do the behavior that's going to resonate that which I've dissociated from. If I stay in denial and dissociation, then that very information that their behavior bounces off of and therefore resonates in me, I'll use that information to build my brain's image of them. It's called projection. So following the cycle, deny, dissociate, and then project. So now I use that very information to build my brain's image of them. They show up in my mind with my problem attached, and I swear, and I talk about them, and I know it must be their problem. But as you've heard me say 1,000 times, if they're the one with the problem, why am I the one with the pain? If they're the one with the problem, why am I the one hanging up the phone? If they're the one with the problem, why am I the one that's irate and agitated and upset? Because what they've done has been their generous response to my call for that dissociated content, that memory to be shown to me. and get it close enough to where I can at least apply forgiveness and start to access it directly in myself. When I access it directly, and the way I access it directly is by collapsing the projection, which keeps me in indirect relationship with that pain. I'm in pain, but it's because you did this. Well, now I've put my pain into my brain's image of you, and I'm indirectly now, through my brain's image of you, through my perceptual construct of you, I'm experiencing that memory as something about you. And while I'm experiencing as something about you, obviously I can't reach into myself and change it. I'm dissociated from it. But the genius of this man, Yeshua, said, here's what you do in that case. You find the exact and specific, the precise, the most precisionally aimed goal that you have in that circumstance, and you cancel your need for it. Shebag that goal. And when you do, that energetic dynamic that you need to face directly, that has been transparently integrated into your brain's image of them, collapses. The whole picture of them collapses when the goal that's driving that perception collapses. And when it collapses in on itself. And if you stand in willingness, you now have access directly to the memory that holds the energetic dynamic that generates the pain. Projection has ended. If you've effectively done step 4 in the forgiveness process, brought love present, and then canceling the goal, allow that underlying energy to surface directly in your mind, now exposed to, remember our definition of processing. That is, when I bring something forward in the presence of love that is less than love, and I hold to that presence of love, now I've entered into process work. And the lies, all of the lies that I've ever told myself, I've maybe taken that particular issue and projected it on 3 different really important people in my life. Maybe my dad or my mom and my sister or my first spouse or my second spouse, or maybe all of them. But when I collapse, when I cancel the goal and collapse it, I get to bring that energy forward directly in me and realize it's about me, and exposed to love, it dissolves. This is one of the places where responsibility communication comes in. Magda, we thank you, if you're listening to the show, for the powerful work you did in the second codependence to interdependence intensive in tackling the responsibility communication and the process that ensued from that, the opening that occurred from that, is so vital to understand and embrace. So anybody that has been part of the intensive, you might want to go back and listen to that again in the follow-up session with Magda on that. It's so profoundly powerful. Because when we language the truth, when I own, rather than when I say, you caused me pain, when I can say, pain has been aroused in me. My pain has surfaced. Or even you did a behavior that resonated my pain. When I'm giving my mind permission to show me that it's my pain, I'm now edging toward the place where I can access that part of my mind directly, and that's the key. I can go back about 30 or so years ago and remember when I was puzzling over what's the key, what is it that causes healing to happen? And healing doesn't happen if you figure out the mind is lying to you. That isn't healing. That's going, I can push that reality aside, but it's not accessing the underlying dynamic that needs to be healed. Healing happens when love is conscious, active, and present. And that which is less than love, rather than being projected into my brain's image of someone else, or even into my brain's image of my own body, rather than projecting it there, I'm able to bring it forward directly. So what was shown to me, what became very clear, and as I've observed it over the years, two things happen when healing occurs. Love, either the individual doing the healing work or someone supporting them, is holding to conscious, active, present love. And that energy that is less than love, and it can be profoundly painful to touch into those memories. That's why we hide them from ourselves through denial. But when I allow that part of my mind to come forward directly in the presence of, I don't have to do anything about it. Because the active presence of love dissolves that which is not love, that which is not accurate or true, energetically. And when you engage in the first century forgiveness process, and rather than you're trying to process through this perception that has this projection, and you're trying to figure it out, and you're trying to fix it, and you're trying to fix them, and if only they would change, then everything could be okay, the goal is never reached there. You can't figure it out. It's the canceling of the goal that collapses the projection, that allows direct access to the dissociated content. And when the dissociated content is breathed forward, when the breath continues to move, and it comes forward in the presence of love, its dissolution occurs. And that's where this particular lesson from the Course, the miracle does nothing. All it does is to undo. And thus it cancels out the interference to what has been done. It does not add, but merely takes away. Remember how many times we've said forgiveness is removal? And what it takes away is long since gone, but being kept in memory appears to have immediate effects. This world, the world of false perception, was over long ago. The thoughts that made it are no longer in the mind that thought them and loved them for a while. The miracle shows the past is gone, and what has gone has no effects. Remembering a cause can but produce illusions of its presence, not effects. All the effects of guilt are here no more, for guilt is over. In its passing went its consequences, left without a cause. Why would you cling to it in memory if you did not desire its effects? Remembering is as selective as perception. Past tense. It is perception of the past as if it were occurring now and still were there to see. Memory, like perception, is a skill made up by you to take the place of what the Creator gave you in creation. And like all things you made, it can be used to serve another purpose. It can be the means for something else. It can be used to heal and not to hurt, if you so wish. Thank you, Yeshua, for that insight, for that understanding, and for those tools. So profoundly powerful. So little bits of genetic junk called memory hang around from generation to generation. They come forward, and people call those things thoughts. And they think they're thinking those thoughts and are unaware that when they engage in that mind energy, they're engaging in a creative process. That then precisely reproduces the patterned generational experiences that everybody says they want to be finished with. If we never learn to actually forgive, to go into and access the part of the mind that holds these memories, this data, these bits of information, then when those bits of information move through resonance, we create out of them. If we never learn to go in and clean that part of the mind up, then what happens is you get to live the title of my book. Why is this happening to me again? And it's a powerful piece of work to be willing to let all of that go and shift back to your design, which is the full physiological presence in every cell of your structure of love. My offering is that's what we're designed for. And that's what we're here to learn, to teach, and to understand. And so, Miss Jeannie, I didn't know that's where I was going to go, but that's where I went. So, has Doug called in? Is his hand up? And my apology, Doug, for having you hang there so long if you are.
He is on. He didn't put his hand up, so I'm going to turn on his microphone and see if he wants to talk. Hi, Doug.
Hi there.
Hey there, good sir.
Yep.
How do you be?
Here.
I didn't know I was going to do that when I opened the show. It was just like, well, I'd been doing some research in the course, and there it was. So, okay, let's go for it. And one thought led to another, and thank you.
Yep. Well, it was all perfectly appropriate, relevant.
A conversation you're ready for?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. It's the only obvious thing to strive for, look towards, try and do, work on, create. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm simply, I'm still low energy, physically. I'm, in recovery from something, and I feel tremendous resistance. Still awake in me. It's like I don't want. There's a certain level of reluctance to accept it. I want something other than what seems to be happening, and I feel like it brings up a lot of non-being content about, oh, that's terrible, this is the worst thing that could happen, that sort of thing.
Well, again, remember that line, the distorting power of the way I want it to be.
Yeah.
And
well,
one of the thoughts that comes is yesterday you were saying, that Diane wants to move away from the relationship, and the question that comes to mind to ask is, are there some goals that she has for you that, one, she might be willing to cancel and really let loose of and process through, and or that you could step into the space of going, oh, I can fulfill that goal. Sure, I can do that. And that's another way to get the non-being mind to quiet down and maybe enter into another level of process. So are there requests being made of you that you're in resistance to that really wouldn't be that big a deal to go, well, sure, I can do that. Sure, I can be in goodwill and cooperation with you on that.
Well, from my perspective, I certainly understand that she has certain goals that are perfectly justifiable, and she's tired of waiting for them, and she feels like she doesn't have a lot of faith in any outcome that looks like what she wants, sufficiently close to what she wants, I think. And so...
so is there anything you can do that can open the space for her to have confidence in those things coming to fruition? Good breath. Sounded like a wiggle.
I am willing to do everything that I am able to do to try and help that to happen. However, I don't want to make excuses. I don't know what to say. It's like I feel like I have been doing the best I can under the circumstances that have been evolving in my life, and that
you might want to look at that little piece of regulatory speech that came in there. The first response was, I don't want to make excuses. And you might want to look at and do some work on the parts of your mind that are saying to you, well, what I really have are some excuses.
Sure. Well,
but let me offer them as facts, and then I won't be making excuses, I think. Maybe.
I'm not clear what that means, Michael.
Well, I'm just offering that as I asked the question, are there some things you could do that would fulfill some of those goals, or at least, as you said, she wants some reasonable indication that there will be fulfillment. And one of your first responses was to say, and I'm just listening to your speech and feeding it back to you, and it's telling us there's a part of your unconscious, I would offer, that's saying you've got some excuses. As you say, I don't want to make excuses. That was one of your first automatic responses. And so I'd offer that you might want to delve into that part of your unconscious that maybe has made some excuses for yourself or for someone else in your life, and clean that up and see if that opens another space.
Okay. Yeah.
What thought went with that breath?
Well, I just wrote down clean up excuses. I feel like are
you breathing?
Yeah, I think so.
I want to acknowledge you, Doug, for the vulnerability that you've had on this show over the years and opening things up.
Sure. I know that the reasons are the experiences that have occurred, the things that have been on my path could be called excuses. And my experience to this point has been that I really did the best I could. I don't feel like I was looking for things to be an excuse to not take action at the level that was within my capability under the circumstances. And at the same time, I recognize that one can always do something more. One can always do something different. So I don't want to.
Right.
I'm willing to recognize that, and I wrote up what I hoped for as a path forward towards achieving these goals, and gave it to her. And, you know, at this point, I mean, she said that at some point she will, when she gets time, write down her feelings more clearly for me. But I feel like she's admittedly overwhelmed and has many, many issues on her plate, all of which are really big and difficult for her with, you know, and at this point, it appears the best information you can gather from her, always subject to a possible change, you know, in the next couple of weeks or whatever. but her direction of travel right now is that she doesn't believe that she wants to continue to invest in this and, you know, accept the friendship.
Is there a specific goal that would follow that up with, I don't want to invest in this because this isn't happening? Is there something specific that you'd be willing to explore or that would be worth exploring?
Well, yes. The two main unsatisfactorily fulfilled goals. The first most unsatisfactorily fulfilled goal is that she wants more financial contribution from me. She wants to feel like I'm earning more money and able to contribute to the relationship in a way that is supportive to our mutual goals more effectively. And I don't think that's
as I recall,
a reasonable goal. What?
That's a pretty old goal. That's an old conversation that's been going on, hasn't it?
It's been going on.
Seems I can
for quite a
recall
while.
back 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago even.
Yes.
So is there something you can do to take that load off her plate? I mean, if you just simply said, okay, I'm going to look in the paper in one end and I'm going to look for a job that's out there that will create a decent cash flow. And as I understand it, it's been a challenge to, you know, create cash flow out of the work you really want to do in the healing realm. So would it be reasonable to say to take that goal off of her plate? Well, you know, maybe it's just the grocery store. You know, they're paying $15 an hour now, and so I'm going to do that until I can bring the financial end of my healing work forward sufficiently to match that. It seems like that might be a reasonable way to take that off of her plate and give you a way to make that contribution. Is that a sensible direction to go?
Sounds like I'm arguing against something, and I desire other than that. But my experience is that I expressed a willingness to do that, and she said that she didn't think that it was a good idea. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's like it's too late. It's like at this point, that would be too late because $15 an hour is not the kind of financial contribution I think that she wants, and it would also, within my own being, of course, and she understands this, probably a pretty big distortion of my purpose, and therefore disruptive to my purpose, because the energy required to do that would so limit any leftover energy for my purpose that it would be pretty destructive to my purpose. That's the consciousness that I have about that, but I'm willing to do that. You know, I expressed a willingness to do that. So
maybe stepping forward and just doing it might be another level. And my offering, and I can remember, you know, I can go back to when I was in the business world and I decided I was going to move into the healing world. And I can remember going back to school and I was starting to teach. So go back and studying naturopathy, and actually was studying law at the same time because that was part of my purpose, and ended up leaving the study of law to move into laws of living, moved it into a different venue. But I can remember being in Atlanta and really knowing this was not my purpose. And back then, I think I was making about $7 an hour for going up on roofs with hot tar and tarring those roofs for a roofing company, so that I could, I was doing an exchange for the apartment that I lived in, so that I could put food on the table and pay my tuition. I was doing roofing in Atlanta at, 98% humidity and 95 degrees and hot tar. And it sure wasn't my purpose, but I can remember that was one of the things that, walked me through what I needed to do in order to keep my life together and keep my kids fed, while I was learning to teach in a way that it empowered me to break through why teaching healing and spiritual work kept me in poverty. Because ultimately, that's what I had to do, was clean up that piece, the part of me that believed, I'd been in, I had Mark III on one side of my driveway and El Dorado on the other. I had businesses in 3 different cities and didn't make a lot of money, but rocked through and spent a lot of money. But when I chose to go into the work of healing and spiritual work, I realized that I had a belief, I had a chunk of mind energy that you had to be in poverty to do that. And I, for about 7 years, I lived in that kind of poverty doing this work. And I can actually remember literally the minute, and I can tell you almost to the inch exactly where I was on the face of the earth when that turned around. And I was able to let loose of the mind energy that doing spiritual work and healing work meant poverty.
Right.
And maybe that piece might be helpful in seeing, maybe there's a piece of work for me there to do while I do what I need to do to keep my relationships and body and soul together. And that the real work that needs to be done is that what holds away success in the venue that you perceive to be your purpose.
I'm sure all these are very valid aspects of healing that need to occur and that would be useful to occur. Sort of the pivotal piece here is, am I going to continue to spend time or live in Minnesota with her, as friends while I endeavor to do such a thing, which I'm advocating for, but she doesn't want to do? Or am I moving here to St. Louis, and then I can do, any or all of these things? And there's nothing stopping me from doing that. It's not like I expect that day after tomorrow she's going to, start dating somebody. I don't expect that. But
right.
But there are 2 centers up there, people who run them I know I'd like to make an effort to work in, and I feel like I want to, again, my goals, I don't want to, I would prefer not to have this level of separation. I've already been through 3 years of very minimal affection between us, and a lot of difficulty in which I have just continuously rewritten my internal scripts to continue to deepen my commitment. But I feel like if I do this, if she asks this and follows through with this, that it really compromises. The mindset I have in my head anyway is that it compromises our potential future together, and it feels immensely difficult for me, just like a very, very hard thing. I don't really prefer to continue to carry on, under these circumstances. It's an option, certainly, and in all probability, it is the option I will choose. But given the circumstances that are as they are, but it's.
Have you done any specific worksheets on that goal that you just talked about?
To live up there, or what?
Well, the whole picture that you're holding in your mind that you'd like to have happen. Have you done any worksheets on those issues, the core of those issues? Pardon
my coughing. I feel like...
It sounds like your body responding, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, there's huge pain there. Immense pain. My pain is that I have to leave, and that I'm failing, and that I have failed her, and that I don't know if I can continue to how well I can continue to hold this position and bear up under the circumstances and so on and so forth. I really yet I have understanding and compassion for her position, and I way earlier on, like a couple of years ago, I went through layers of anger and upset with her withdrawing and lack of commitment to us and so on, and I cleared lots and lots of that out. I don't really feel that. I just feel now tremendous sadness, tremendous sorrow and loss. And
question:
what?
How does sorrow and loss look like your life? How does sorrow and loss look like your power person's life? My offering is your sorrow and loss has nothing to do with what's happening in Minnesota or St. Louis. Your sorrow and loss has got to do with what you're carrying around inside of you that needs to be accessed. The memories made up to take the place of what the Creator gave you in creation of sorrow and loss.
Absolutely, no question, Michael. That's where my worksheets have been focused lately, and unfortunately, I don't have them in my hand available to me right at this moment. But that's what's up, no question. The non-being content that dominates my reality that I forgive and remove is sorrow and loss, and as I've been working with it, it's like I've been in contact with all kinds of sorrow and loss from every time that I've felt sorrow and loss in my life. Just the
right
loss of my, from. So
remember that there's a dual process here. And part of it is allowing yourself to access and process through those things. And part of it is, in the presence of that sorrow and loss, building your relationship with conscious, active, present love and bringing that into the space. Some meditations where you're focused on what you're perceiving as the pain within Diane and within yourself, the sorrow and loss within yourself in relationship. And as you're holding that, holding it in the space of calling forward and cultivating your relationship with conscious, active, present love. And as that capacity to hold love present increases, and you cancel the goals that are driving the sorrow and loss, then rather than the sorrow and loss being turned into perceptual constructs by your mind and the complexity and the impossibility of working through them seemingly having to be done, by canceling those goals and letting those constructs collapse, constructs that you know so well and are so real, by canceling the goals that drive them and allowing yourself, having the strength and the focus and the power to hold love present, while the energetic dynamics beneath those constructs come forward. And that will contribute to the dissolution of the energetic patterns underneath the constructs. And when they're gone, the constructs are gone. And the creation of those dynamics, or making those dynamics over and over and over again, will tend to disappear.
So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is that in addition to processing directly, trying to surface and surrender and forgive sorrow and loss constructs, I need to focus on calling forth conscious active love and holding that presence in my being so that that act will further support the
dissolution.
The dissolution of those things, right?
Yes.
It's not
and recognizing that love is your being.
Okay.
That love is your being. And so calling being into carbon-based memory, focusing and bringing love present there, opens to the next level of dissolution of the underlying generational patterns.
Right.
And I breathe with you.
That's yeah. That's basically an expansion of what's I don't know what step it is. It's about step 5 or somewhere in there in the worksheet. When we're just calling the love in and saying, I invite Ruka to assist me in healing this. Right? It's like pulling lots and lots of that love into my being, recognizing that my being's nature is love, and inviting that condition of love to be present to help undo these underlying non-being constructs, right?
Yes.
All right.
And when I look back over the years and watch people in healing, the most monumental shifts happen at that moment where anybody in the space is holding to love, and the core element of that pain comes forward. It's like an instant transmutation that occurs.
All right.
course, the breath is a key component in the whole process. The breath is Ruka, is the presence, opens the full. It's like the opening of the valve when that breath is opened to that flow of love through your structure. That's where the still point process comes in.
Yeah.
And I hold the space for both of you because I've watched you guys together and what you're capable of together. And, you know, when I say to myself, well, I'm capable of this, therefore I'm going to go do this, then everything in me that's unlike that has to come up for healing. And just know that I'm here, Jeannie's here, holding the space for whatever all of that's about to surface so deeply and profoundly in the presence of a greater depth and profound presence of love, so that that dissolution occurs, that forgiveness, that underlying energy. Is let loose.
Right. Yes. Okay.
You know, I'm in South Florida. My kids are 1.5 and 3. I had a house in North Georgia I'd rented and was working on writing Why Is This Happening to Me Again? December 24th, the pipes freeze. And we can't stay in the house, and it's going to be weeks before they're fixed. A friend in North Palm Beach, Florida, has been wanting me to come down there, so he's like, come on down, you can stay with me while the pipes are being fixed. And, you know, I've been going to Unity in Lake Worth. I know the minister really well. I'm sure he'd love for you to come and speak. Down there, did that, and we had such a response that the minister in Lake Worth called the minister in Fort Lauderdale and said, hey, you got to have this guy come down. So I went down and spoke there, did a 6-week series, and was planning to come back to North Georgia to finish writing my book. It's the last of the 6-week series. I had named the series, weeks before. I just jotted down when they said, would you come and do a series of 6 weeks? I just jotted down a series of titles. And the last title was, Still Waiting for Your Ship to Come In? Which one did you send out? I'm driving down I-95. I'm staying up in North Palm Beach. I'm driving down to Fort Lauderdale. It's the last in the series. And tomorrow, I'm putting the kids in the car and driving back to Georgia. I've got about $102 in my pocket. I don't know how I'm going to get food in the fridge and have the gas to get back to North Georgia with the kids so that I can fulfill some commitments I have in Atlanta. But that's what I have to do. My friend who we're staying with is saying, look, Michael, you just got things started here. You can't leave. You've got to stay. It's like, no, I've got a commitment in Atlanta. I've got to go. I'm driving down I-95, and I'm pondering, how am I going to do all this? I'm literally at Hillsborough Boulevard, the Hillsborough exit, and a voice inside my head says, Michael, take the $100 that you got in your pocket, go into a bank and get a $100 bill for it, and give it away at the workshop tonight. To which I said, are you crazy? I got off the interstate, and I got a $100 bill, and I created an exercise where I talked about, the scriptures talk about giving and you get back tenfold, yea, 100-fold. How much does everybody want back? And, of course, everybody wants $1 million back. I say, okay, well, get out the 10 grand and give it away. Well, let's not go that far. Well, get out what you're willing to give away. Fold it up in a little ball that you can, with your hand closed, pass to another person. I had a $100 bill in my hand, and I started the exercise, and I gave it to somebody. And then we did an exchange. I had everybody in the room stand up. You know, you wrote a check to cash, or you had cash in your hand. You folded it up small enough so nobody could see what it is, and you just you handed it to somebody else and received what they had in their hand. And you went to the next person, you handed it off, and you received, and you handed it off. We did that about 6 times. I ended up with a $20 bill. I got in the car. The donations that came out of the workshop that night gave me about another $100. So I've got about $120. And I get back to North Palm Beach. I load the kids in the car. I borrow some money from the friend I'm staying with so I can get back and put food in the fridge. I get in the car to start the car, and the car does nothing when I turn the key. It is dead. My friend has been standing there saying, "You got to stay. You can't leave. You're just getting things started here." I unloaded the car, unloaded the kids, made arrangements to fly to Atlanta, and stayed. The next week, I had a full-time practice in South Florida. The next week. And I've never made less than triple anything that I made in the 7 years before that since that day. At what point is this energetic pattern going to shift? I hold the space for it to be soon.
All right.
And the phone's going to cut us off, so if we need to continue tomorrow, I'm wide open, and otherwise we'll hold the space for you
mean
for
Monday?
Diane, and or Monday, pardon me, yeah, it's Friday already. Time is flying. Holding the space, have an awesome weekend and blessings. Bye, everybody.